Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, how to deal with this is part of what we'll be focusing on this morning. We're joined by Professor Utomi, a political economist. Thank you for coming this morning, Prof.
I'm glad I'm here.
Well, this focus about the value of the Naira against the dollar. There's been several arguments about it. I think some predicate theirs on ever since the president said he has to be convinced on why he should devalue the currency. But there are those who also think, well, yeah, much as he may say that, but the value of the currency now, it's something completely different from what they think it is nominally. But then we've seen in a couple of days now how the Naira has gone from over 300 to between 220 and 250. What do you think is going on?
Well, first of all, I think the whole conversation is wrongly premised. I think that we are obsessed with this thing called the value of the dollar, and it's preventing us from focusing on building our economy. I think that the value of a currency is essentially a symptom of something more important that is underlying. And so we're rushing to treat a symptom and we're not getting to the fundamentals. You can treat a symptom for so long and a dramatic effect will come anyway. So why don't we really focus on what the issues are with the economy? Right now what we have is a dollar supply challenge. And because we are sort of obsessed with the dollar, because we are not producing a lot of what we're consuming, once that obsession with the dollar grips us and supply is declining because the source of revenue, oil price, is coming down, you are open to all kinds of speculations on a currency. And so it can swing one way or the other. So instead of getting fixated with this business of value of the Naira, why don't we look at fixing the fundamentals, and then the value of the Naira will emerge as a function. You just make a point about what the real value of the currency is.
Mm-hmm.
Best measure is what's called the purchasing power parity. And you know, in economics, you can go around trying to measure this in all kinds of ways, but Economist newspaper in England gave us years ago a very simple way of determining purchasing power parity. It's called the hamburger quotient. You see, Big Mac, McDonald's hamburger, is the same anywhere in the world you eat it. It's got exactly the same property. Meat generally with the same property, the bun, the sesame seeds on it, and all of that. So, how many Naira do you need to produce a quarter pounder in Nigeria? How many pounds do you need to produce a quarter pounder in England? How many dollars do you need to produce a quarter pounder in the US? Gives you a sense for what your exchange rate really is. Now, if you go back, and it's good to go back, because these things, there's nothing new about what we're experiencing. It's been experienced several times in history. So if we can draw lessons, even from our own history and what's going on elsewhere, the Asian financial crisis, 1997, I recall arriving in Kuala Lumpur from the World Bank annual meeting in Hong Kong in 1997, middle of the Asian financial crisis. Every time Mahathir Mohamad, then Prime Minister of Malaysia, made a statement, the ringgit Malaysia took a plunge. I was at the Bank Negara in Malaysia, that's the Central Bank of Malaysia, and I was saying to this lady who was my detail person was, I said, it's just Soros just playing you guys. As well, politicians will say what they say. Dr. M will say what he says. The truth of the matter is that current account deficits opened up. We were spending much more than, we're bringing in. And so a currency trader can take advantage of that fundamental weakness and play you one way or the other. So somebody can come here and say to you that he can change the value of the currency. And indeed he can, by just bringing some more supply, because it's just a simple supply-demand issue. But what is really at stake is the fundamentals of the economy, and if it doesn't change, if you do your short-term supply or no supply thing to play the value one way or the other, one day it comes home to roost, as happened to Nigeria between 1982 and 1985. When in 1982 we were earning a lot from the crude oil prices that went up, the Iranian Revolution, 81. 82 suddenly market went south. In fact, for 2 weeks in 1982, Nigeria didn't sell a barrel of crude oil, and therefore there was not enough supply. We'd gotten used to consuming in a wild way. I mean, I came home from grad school to Nigeria in 80, and people were, to show that they were happening, pouring champagne into buckets of water and washing their hands in it. I mean, that kind of madness needed ultimately to be reined in. And when supplies crashed and reality was beginning to settle, we said, if we don't devalue. At that time, our currency was a block currency. It was just determined from the central bank. It's not now that we are playing markets. It was just a block currency. So central bank will say, this is our exchange rate. And we continue to say, this is our exchange rate. We will not devalue. We were not changing the fundamentals of the economy. We were still monoproduct, dependent on this thing that we were not selling. And one day, Central Bank of Nigeria could not pay due credits from all of those who had all kinds of supply arrangements with Nigeria. And they stopped supplying Nigeria. And a few months later, what were we doing? We were queuing up to buy sugar. It was called essential commodities. We were queuing up to buy salt. If we don't deal with the fundamentals, we will queue again. It is not a matter of exchange rate. We are talking about symptoms. Let's deal with the fundamentals of a producing economy, the diversifying of the base of our economy, which is not a light bulb that you can switch on and off.
So what we're seeing now are symptoms of what's to come if we don't heed.
Absolutely. We need to be working on the critical issues, the fundamentals of our economy. Right now, Nigerian economy, by the way, to be very fair, is a lot more diversified than people realize. Most of it have happened without any serious incentives or plans or anything. Let's take the whole, we rebased our GDP, and Nollywood and co came into big play. Nobody worked a strategy for that industry. Just out of work fellows in television and whatever picked up their cameras and began to shoot these things. People laughed at first, and it became an industry. Now, how do you create incentives for those kinds of things to become real industries, become the base of the earnings of this country? And those are the issues that are really at stake. Much better conversation for me to be having.
Which is conversation on a larger scale. I mean, we are talking entire industries, but with this conversation on devaluation of the Naira or not, has come the conversation on choices. Because it would seem that a lot more people are beginning to get aware of how their everyday choices can affect, the economy.
Absolutely.
Do you think that has helped in some ways?
Indeed. And we must continue this conversation so incentives that are coming will be clear to people. Because it's all about incentives. Incentives lead to the choices that we make, and we are ultimately the choices that we make. Part of the communication coming out of, say, the central bank is that, look, we're spending so much money on school fees. Do we need quality education? Yes, we need quality education. We used to get quality education around here. We stopped getting it, and so people started, but after a while it became a prestige thing. It became an elite culture thing. And part of what I'm hearing is that a significant portion of these monies that are leaving the country for primary education, when people are sending 7-year-old kids to go to school abroad just because their neighbors have sent their children. What do? Incentives again.